Well, hi there. Time has come to install the transmission onto the bell housing and effectively have the front of the drivetrain done and dusted. Previous videos, you'll remember I just trimmed up the inner frame over the transmission tunnel to accept a mid-shift location for the transmission. So I'm going to install my transmission. Everything should be fine. The video today is going to talk about, I'm going to show you how I do it for the first time, I guess, while I'm doing it. There's four things I'm going to talk about today. First of all, my transmission clutch setup is going to be cable actuated. So if you've never seen one of these, effectively, there's a lever here that was actuated by a clutch cable from the pedal. So when you press the pedal, it squeezes this lever against the fingers of the pressure plate, relieving pressure on the friction plate, which allows effectively the transmission to spin autonomously from the engine. So the engine can rev and the transmission will keep going at the speed it was, or if it's not moving, it'll stay stopped. A lot of people use hydraulic clutches, which is a little fancier, a little better, a little heavier, but probably a little easier to actuate too with your leg. I'm going to use a cable clutch. I'm used to cable clutches and I should be okay with that. A few things. First of all, since it is cable clutch, what I've decided to do is to use Forte's engineering, Mike Forte, who's a big contributor to the Cobra forums. He has a business which caters to the Cobra replica crowd, and also to the performance Mustang and performance Chevy crowd too. What he's found is that with this just simple common sense, he's built a little kit, engineered a kit, which effectively extends this clutch fork out about 2 inches, and he has a matching plate which sits on the edge of the bell housing, which sit at about 2 inches. And by moving both components out 2 inches, it drastically reduces the mechanical effort required to disengage the clutch spring. And by doing so, it makes it a little easier to use, obviously, but it also prolongs the life of the cable, or that's what they claim, and it makes perfect sense. That would be one of the benefits of it. So I bought such a kit, and I'm going to install that. Okay, I have my son Liam as the cameraman here. So just a few minutes ago, when I posted the other video, I wanted to share with you an idea for engage the clutch when it's out of the car. We kind of came up with this thing kind of at the last minute. About $3 solution with Mike Forte's clutch reducer kit. This here, just a threaded rod. We bought at Canadian Tire. You can buy these anywhere with some a nut on one end and a washer and a nut on the other. Slide it through where the cable would go and gradually engage it with a wrench, and that will close the clutch fork. And that will work great, and it worked great for us. We used it so we could align the friction plate, and everything just slid together beautifully. One thing you don't want to do is draw in the transmission into the bell housing. There's a lot of videos out there, primarily by engine builders, unfortunately, that suggest you line it up close, you get it within a ½ inch, and then you draw it in with a bolt. The problem with that is that if the input shaft is slightly off, which is why it doesn't slide right in, it's because it's hitting just on the corner of the pilot bearing. And if you push that in with nuts and bolts all around, it could cause pressure or stress against the thrust bearings inside the engine. It could damage the pilot bearing, it could damage the input shaft. You want this to slide in all with hand, just gently pop in there. And we just did it, mocked it up great, and it worked beautifully. So what I'm going to do now is quickly put the clutch fork back in. We just tightened down the clutch fork pivot ball, the jam nut. So now we're going to put in the clutch fork, and you can watch me as I slide in the transmission and go from there. So first things first, ensure our throwout bearings lined up here. Spring in between the two flanges. Actually, what I'm going to do is pop that out because it's a little easier to get this in otherwise. And then once it's in there, Slide that in like so. There we are. Goes on the pivot ball, and we're ready to roll. And then I simply will lift the transmission in, and it should slide right in. I have these 1-inch grade 8 bolts, and all I need is to use one just to hold it on. That'll act as my hand, and then I'll put the other 3 in. And then come back and put washers on each one and torque them to spec. So here we go. You ready, Lee?
Yep.
Just like that. That's how it goes in. It slides right in up to the flange. So this is ready to go. Now, one little other hint is that when you're doing this, ensure that the, we didn't just have it, we had it in neutral there. Ensure the transmission's in gear. I hit it a little hard there, I don't recommend doing that. Ensure the transmission's in gear in case the splines on the clutch are, a little off from the input shaft. This allows you to sort of rock those splines to get them into the friction plate. Okay, so I'm going to put it in neutral now. There we go. So, from here, all we're going to do, and there's nothing much to it, and since it's sitting in there, it's just barely sitting in there, so I'm going to take a piece of wood underneath just for support in case it pops out. But the first one we'll do is we'll take these bolts, I'll put a washer on each one, we'll put those in, and we'll be good to go. Thanks for watching.